Well, I think Marcy's going to get this going in a minute or so here, but I think Joe and Angie will probably have you two kind of just kick off. Just a
Yep.
reminder, we're talking to fire chiefs and fire prevention kind of around the state. And so that's kind of our core audience, and we just kind of wanted to reach the topic and kind of get it out there that, hey, school's starting and they might get questions or
hmm
might be working on fire drills, and we wanted to kind of give them what you guys have and what we have. So, but
You want
Marcy, whenever you want to start, it's up to you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I know the people here are probably used to us having Teams meetings rather than a Teams webinar. So in the Teams webinar, we are automatically recording and you are blocked from commenting or turning on your camera unless we allow it. So if you need to jump in or have a question or something, you're going to have to raise your hand or type something in the chat to let us know so that we can get you going on there. Today, we are joined by Joe and Angie from the Department of Public Education, Public Instruction, sorry. And we're going to start with them telling us what they're doing this time of year, because I'm sure they're just, hanging out,
Yeah.
doing vacation stuff. So, Joe, you first?
Yep. So I'll share my screen. So I called for everyone online. I called Marcy. Me and Angie called Marcy yesterday and just asked what exactly you want to see in this presentation. What do you want to know? And we talked a little bit. So Angie and I talked offline as well. And we're just going to do an overview of what school approval opportunity is, just our office, and how it leads into the work you all do with your fire marshal reporting and our annual compliance report. And really just want to educate everyone online on, what exactly we do here in at DPI, especially our Office of School Approval and Opportunity. So I'll share my screen. Marcy, let me know when you can see it.
I can see you.
Okay. Again, my name is Joe Koloski. I'm the Director of School Approval and Opportunity, and I have my staff officer, Angie Thomas, here. Angie, you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody.
And Angie's going to start. We'll talk. We're going to do this together. We're going, back and forth kind of conversation. But she'll get into the details on what she does regarding the fire marshal report and the annual compliance report. So, first thing, everyone says, what is school approval? What do you do for school approval? It's not an office title that really describes anything besides approving schools. And we do so much more than that. So I want to dig into what approval is and what opportunity is. First of all, overarching, we do oversee schools in the compliance area. So compliance in the state law, admin code, code that's outside of our influence, like the fire code. We work with other entities like yourselves to ensure that schools are being compliant. But what else we do? All the school law flows through our office. So during the legislative session, it's a very busy time for us, and the beginning of the school year is a very big time for us. We work on law implementation, creating guidance for the field on issues, compliance, complaints and other issues that arise. We deal with everything from FERPA, which is the Federal Education Privacy Act, to bullying in schools, to school operations, to school staffing issues. A lot of the issues that do rise up will be pushed back to the district unless it's something very severe like child abuse and neglect. And then we'll intervene by either doing a 960, which is a child abuse and neglect form, which goes to CPS, which is Child Protective Services. So we work with them closely as we work with you guys. We also do desk audits to ensure that teachers are certified, reports are in, but Angie will talk about that a little bit. So Angie, I'll kick it off to you just to give an overview what a desk audit is.
Okay, so every year, usually starting in October or early November, I do a desk audit on every single entity in the state. So that's public, non-public state entities. I think there's usually over about 600 audits that are done and sent out to the schools. So it's very time consuming. And these audits are checking against several things. So whether teachers are highly qualified, whether they're offering all required curriculum. One of those items is also fire marshal reports. It will check against them if they are past the 3-year mark, because one needs to be done every 3 years for all entities. So it will come up as a flag on their desk audit if they're out of compliance with that fire marshal report. If there's missing staff, like if they don't have superintendents, counselors, principals on there, MISO 3 is at well flag for that. So there's kind of, it just basically catches all the things that are in law and ensures that the schools are doing what they need to do.
Yeah, essentially it's another approval function, another compliance function. If there is a teacher that is, one of the main flags are teachers that are out of field or teachers that have expired teaching licenses. That's against the law. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the annual compliance report. And that's a big no-no because there's liability issues, there's insurance issues, there's a gambit of issues that can happen. So I'll get on the phone, I'll call the school, or Angie will get on the phone, call the school, and we'll work out on how to get these teachers certified and licensed. A big change that happened the last 2 years, which is causing a lot of problems last year and this year, is long-term subs can be listed on what we call the MISO 3, which is a management information report. And essentially just that report was coded MISO 3, but it just means employee report, just to make sure that those teachers have a license. A lot of teachers, they'll have a substitute license. They can't sign a contract this year, which means it will go through their years of service, but they can make full teacher pay if the district approves that. A lot of districts are doing that. They'll put the full sub in there and pay that teacher full amount, but they won't have the correct licensure. So it's becoming an issue, as you probably can see. And if you have kids, it is an issue. And I can see how parents are upset. You have a substitute. I'll pick on myself. I have an art degree, art education. So I can teach K-12 art. I can I have a special education degree. I can teach K-12 special education courses. But I'm not a physics guy. Right now, as it stands, I just go get my sub license and I can be put in a physics classroom and teach physics. And I would say schools are doing their due diligence not to be so, a certain teacher with such a wide education gap in the content they're teaching. They're going to try to have, like, if you have to teach a life science teacher, try to put them in a biology or in a physical science classroom instead of a physics class or a calculus class. As an art teacher, I would not feel comfortable at all, even teaching a music class, which is another art class or arts class. So that's been an issue that's rising to the top that we're dealing with. I feel that that's going to go away next year. We have some plans in place that for bills that are going to hopefully ease the teacher recruitment issues we have in the state and shortage issues. And of course, the last piece here, the big one, is the annual compliance report, which gets schools approved and to operate, and that's how they get their funding. So I will come back to that. So what's the opportunity? I like to say it's unique education experiences, not only for kids but for adults, and I'll talk about that. We oversee the 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which is an after-school program, keeps kids off the street. If you know any of the research out there, kids get into the most trouble and participate in the most at-risk behaviors from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. After school, mom and dad, or mom, even if it's a single house, mom's working, dad's working, there's no one to oversee these kids, and they tend to get in trouble. And there's research to back that up all across the nation with police reports. We can pull that information where kids that are 12 to 15, that if there's no supervision, they are the most likely to be in trouble. So we have this program for that, to combat that issue, and it's very wildly popular here in North Dakota. But it also gives much needed daycare for students, especially elementary students, that don't have anywhere to go after school because mom and dad are working. We do the Be Legendary School Boards training. It's a unique experience for school board members on how to lead their school district appropriately, how to create goals, how to evaluate their superintendent. board members. They're not educators. The last education they had was when they were in school. So they don't know what it's like to run a school, and they kind of get in the weeds sometimes with their decision making. One of the examples we use is they spend a lot of time on the basketball schedule coming up next year, and who's going to be the opening home opener, or who's going to be the last game of the season before we go in the playoffs. And that's not their job. Their job is to oversee their district and the education functions of the district and to approve policy. So we're getting a lot of positive feedback from that program. Another one is Learn Everywhere. So this was a bill that was put into place to let kids go out in the workforce and earn credit. And right now, I was looking at our course codes. We do have some EMT course codes for a CTE, which is a career and technical education. We have some firefighting course codes that are in a career and technical education. For years, career and tech ed students can go into the field and do a work experience and get those credits. But if you're general ed, like your English, mathematics, what's another one? Your general electives, my art, music. You don't have a work experience where you can go out into the field and get that experience, make money sometimes, and get the credit. One perfect example we use is, if you partner with a local newspaper agency in town, and at the end of the day, you go down to the Bismarck Tribune and you work on editing and proofreading articles. You work on print. You work on the computer on your design of your newspaper. You could earn English credit if you have an English supervisor, English teacher that's supervising that course from the school. But the student, like my kid who's a 16-year-old, could drive down to Bismarck from Mandan and work with at the Tribune and earn that credit without having to be in the classroom, which is a very unique experience. Kids love it. Teachers like it because it kind of thins their classroom too while those kids are out in the world. Innovative education waiver. Essentially, that is there's state law that prohibits you from doing what you want to do. You write a waiver, and we waive that law. And you could do that. So seat time is one where you have to have so many hours in a school year. We can waive that. We can do more out of the school experiences. There's a lot of things to do with that innovative waiver. Another big one we're working on right now is our security and computer science, getting that into our classrooms because these are not going away anytime soon. We need to teach kids how to properly use them. One, so that they don't get themselves in trouble, but also to prepare them for possibly some work in the future, working in one of the biggest, fastest growing areas, which is cybersecurity and computer science. And also we do, I hold the science, technology, engineering, and math, which is the STEM portfolio here at DPI, getting kids into those fields. I actually meet with Department of Transportation on Monday. They have a STEM education grant. I don't know if you saw in the paper last week. So I contacted them immediately to try to hop on and provide them resources with that program. Okay, so we're going to get into the compliance stuff. So this is our state law on, blow this up here for you. So don't worry, I'm going to make it bigger. 15.06 is one of the laws that govern our school calendar. I don't want to make you sick. Ensure schools are open for all students. I get calls on this all the time. School calendar life. Angie works on our school calendar and approving that. But 15.016 is approval of public schools. There are several things that all public schools must do to be approved to operate. They have to have licensed teachers. They have to be licensed at the courses they teach. They have to meet the curriculum that we have set in the course, the standards that we have. They have to participate in a approval, a cycle of improvement. Non-pubs don't have to do that, but public students do. And of course, you have the state fire marshal report, which we are going to talk about later. All individuals have to have a background check. It just goes over these minimal things that schools have to do to operate. I want to dispel a myth between accreditation and approval. So approval is you are approved to operate legally. You could open your doors. Students in your building now abide by the compulsory education law. They're not out of compliance, or they're not breaking any laws on education delivery. Accreditation is above and beyond. We don't require accreditation in North Dakota. All of our public school districts do have accreditation because it is a quality standard. They're looking at how are we going to be better? How are we going to implement unique programs for our students? How are we implementing technology? Is everyone certified, administrators certified, or a library media specialist certified? You don't have to have a library media specialist in your school, but if you do, that's one extra quality standard that they have. So of course, the state, I'm not going to belabor this point. You all know this better than I do, but it's every 30 years, like Angie said, there's a state fire marshal report. And of course, if there's a deficiency, then you all make the recommendation to our state superintendent and the district superintendent. Hey, we have to fix this. We'll close the school down if we don't. And I get calls every once in a while from your folks on what the deficiencies are, where they are, how to remedy them. And I support that feedback and that back and forth conversation, because we need to know what's happening out there. Angie needs to know, the superintendent needs to know, because what happens is someone will pick up the phone and say, Glen Allen School is a cesspool, and so I catch it on fire. It's a tinderbox, and that goes in the paper. And if we can cut that off before we get there, it's greatly appreciated. So Angie, I'm gonna take this is gonna be your slide here. So you want to comment on these, what we do behind the scenes?
Yes, sure. So I must receive a copy of all fire marshal reports for both public and non-public schools. I know there are some of the big districts are really good about just copying me when they send the emails to the superintendents or administrators. But there are some schools in some situations where I'm not getting copies. And so that is a situation. So I have to keep all of them digitally on file, and then I enter them into ND Teach, which is one of the big programs that we work with. And so I enter all the dates into ND Teach, and then that is going to keep that information, and is one of the ways that when I run my desk audit, it's checking against the most recent date that was entered. And so there are half situations where I'm not getting the fire marshal report, so I don't have that most recent copy on file. And then once they get that flag on their desk audit, they'll send them to me. So I think in some situations, especially in the smaller districts, maybe the fire marshals or the designees aren't aware that they need to send me a copy. And I try to remind the schools as well, when you're getting one, to send it to me too. I'd rather have 2 copies than no copies. And there are some situations where the school hasn't been audited or hasn't been inspected within that 3-year period. And I do know I've spoken with people before, and they've let me know, whether it's a fire marshal or designees, that they've had a hard time hiring people. And so they've just been very honest with me, and I super appreciate that, because I do realize there are a lot of entities in the state to inspect. So I guess if you have any questions on any of this stuff, just be sure to give me a call or email me. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. It is important that I receive a copy, because I do keep it digitally and I do enter it into ND Teach, because again, that is one of the major pieces of the desk audits that I run. And so schools will be flagged if they're out of that 3-year time frame.
And another thing, you talk about audits. I mean, we technically can still be audited by the state auditor on anything that isn't related to money. So if it's like, I'm the audit, it says state law says you need to audit or have fire marshal reports on file, show me your reports and who's out of compliance, and we have to provide that information. So it is good. We have this working relationship that if there is an issue, we can reach out. And, work with state auditors, that they're pretty good, especially if we can say, hey, we've documented that there's not been a fire marshal report. They're having trouble finding people. There's a workforce issues all over the state. They won't take away our birthdays, which is a good thing. But they will say, have a recommendation. You still need that fire marshal report, or even all your desk audits. So we just want to give an overview. I didn't want to give too much information today. I want to combine the work you do and the work we do. We do appreciate everything you guys do, your teams do out there, because it does keep schools safe. And like I said, I mean, anything that goes wrong, I mean, it's going to hit the paper, and we have to do our due diligence to ensure, our kids are safe, essentially. So we can say, hey, no, this is not happening. Everyone in the state is working hard to make sure that kids are trained, educated, and safe to come to school every single day. So, any questions? I know they can't speak, but they can use the chat though, right, Marcy?
Yes. Again, if you missed my announcement, you can't come off from mute unless I let you. So you can always raise a hand or use the chat if you have any questions or input.
And we have our contact info here. Please reach out to us, both of us at the same time, individually. We don't mind at all. Just, reach out if you have a question. We'll help you out.
Joe
And
and
as you
Angie, if
know-
you guys, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
If you don't mind sticking around, Marcy and I just have a quick little presentation to kind of cover our side of
Yeah.
the school safety things that we have, and then we'll just again open it up for questions at the end of that.
Yeah, fine. Yep. Well, Angie might have to take off a little bit early, but I'll be here for the whole time. So.
Hey, Aaron came up with something. Do you want the initial report with deficiencies, or do you want the corrected report, or both?
I would love both, please. And that's a great question. So thanks for asking.
Thanks, Aaron. And as you guys can all imagine, we work very closely with Joe and Angie. So if you didn't catch their contact information, or if someday you're wondering, you can't remember what you did with it, don't hesitate to reach out. We can put you in touch with them too. But moving on, I'm going to share our little slideshow. Does that work, Doug?
Yep.
Oh.
And I think everyone that looks like on this call is pretty familiar with our office. So I think we can kind of skip through all the normal intro stuff that we have on our office. Just kind of cut to the things about school inspections with us. Back one, I think.
There we go.
There we go. Yep. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being on the call. Appreciate it. Like we said at the start, this is just an opportunity for us to get DPI and us and all fire prevention and fire chiefs that we can around the state that are interested to talk about schools as we're gearing up and school year is kicking off here. So these are legislatively required. They're legislatively required in two places, one under Department of Education's and then also under North Dakota Century Code 18812 under the fire stuff. So two places it's required and also they pretty much mirror each other. There's no conflict. It's just under both sections, I'm guessing, to kind of cover both crowds, the fire and the educators. If a school cannot meet code, that's one thing Joe mentioned. They do accept a plan of correction if it's how I think it's in Century Code if it's something that can't be met right away. So we do work with schools on that. And typically for us though, for those on this call, especially like if you run into that where we run into a plan of correction with a school, that's typically when we pick up the phone and call Joe or Angie and say, hey, this one's going to be something that's bigger, that's going to take a while. It's going to be, something that's going to be discussed at school board meetings or whatever. If they're going to need to invest in the school more or fix something, we usually pick up the phone and contact that. So we just complete that communication and make sure, like they said, that we get ahead of everything that we can and everybody's on the same page. So one area that that's kind of our barrier for when we need to pick up the phone and actually have a discussion about what's going on versus when we just send the report. Next slide, I think we're ready for. So we covered every 3 years, unless there are dormitories. I think there are a few schools in the state that still have dormitories. And for us, we are required to inspect the residential portion every year. So those are the only schools that, at least for the state's perspective, that we're going to go to every year. I know a lot of the local jurisdictions do every school every year. So that doesn't really affect you, but just explain what our office does on that. We typically try to do most of our school inspections January through May, just because that works for our schedule. Usually we're catching schools at a decent time of the year where it's not too crazy or too busy, and they're still in session. So we're still seeing the school as it is with furniture in place and everything else. So it's just kind of a good time of year for us. So that's when most of ours occur. They do occur outside of that if we miss one or if one gets delayed, but that's when we try to focus most of our efforts on them. So fire chiefs, what do fire chiefs need to do in this process? So most of you on this call are under a delegation of authority or work with us pretty closely, so you're probably pretty well aware of that. But we do ask that you notify us of all the inspections completed that calendar year. We usually do that by sending out an Excel spreadsheet at the beginning of the year of the schools that we have record of that need to be inspected. And then we wait for that to come back and ask for it again in December. So hopefully they're all wrapped up by that time. And if you have others that you inspected and want to notify us of them, you can add to that, but we do just need some record that that school was due and did get inspected on our side of things, just like DPI does. When we do them, we contact the local fire chief, make sure that they're available and see if they want to work with us on that. And then the last thing we kind of include on here is, there might be jurisdictions out there that aren't delegated authorities. However, you also may be involved with your local school on, truck visits, public education, other things that you may be in that school for, that might not necessarily be just the inspection or the triennial inspection. One thing that I specifically wanted to touch base on is the emergency evacuation memo. So in 2018, we had a lot of questions from, I think, DPI, from fire chiefs about what emergency evacuations are required and when. So that is outlined in our fire code. There's also a section in Century Code 15.1, which essentially just says that emergency and disaster drills are required to be done and different types are required. Now, our fire code further clarifies that by stating how many and when they must be done. Specifically, the only one that's really outlined, as far as I know, is on the timeline, is the first fire drill needs to be conducted within 10 days of the beginning of classes. But the code does say, our fire code does say emergency evacuation drills need to be conducted monthly for schools. So what we clarified through that memo was, we just said, we understand that as emergency evacuation drills. So that can be hazmat, tornado, active shooter, fire, whatever. However, we want to see at least a quarter of those or 4 of those throughout the year as fire drills specifically. And that first one being within the first 10 days. So that's what that memo initially clarified. That's what we still push out as our communication. That was developed between the fire chiefs and our office as a common understanding of that. So
Doug, is that the 7/31/2018 memo?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure I have the right one on file.
Yeah. So we have a new code, but nothing's changed on that. So I'd still direct everybody back to that original memo for any clarification on that answers. Next thing we had was some common violations. So most of the attendees here are fire inspectors that are under delegated authority. So you guys are all going out and doing these. I'm sure you're very well aware of these. So we're going to skip through these pretty quickly here. But as you all know, check your exits, check your fire prevention systems or fire protection systems. Electrical and mechanical areas are going to be our key places. You can go ahead and keep going. You can skip this one too, Marcy. And then obviously those special operations such as welding, woodwork, painting or any of that stuff that might be going, especially in our high schools and stuff, places to really take a little closer look at. And that's really all we had on that. And Marcy, I think the next slides are for you.
So we just wanted to touch base on the, Fire Prevention Week is coming up in October, and the NFPA's Fire Prevention Week theme is smoke alarms, make them work for you. So there's lots and lots of information out there on that. The NFPA did a webinar. They've got all kinds of customizable community flyers and press releases. There's lesson plans. They've also teaming up with Domino's, so there's some kind of a partnership there. If you sign up and get that rolling, USFA has some free materials that we've talked a lot about at their library. So they do a Sesame Street thing for kids 3 to 5, but they also have a seniors fire safety protection area. I checked YouTube and there's lots of videos out there of people doing cute little cartoons saying our message. That they're not breaking any new ground, but there's some cartoons available out there. And I like those especially for some of the smaller schools that aren't going to get into the school and need to be able to provide teachers with something. And we are in the early stages of trying to find something, a consistent program to offer to the smaller schools and things like that. And that's all based on what Grand Forks did with UND. So we're trying to expand that program. Another thing that I didn't get on here that Doug came up with yesterday and I've forgotten about is Kitty. So the smoke detector people, they have lots of programming relating to smoke detectors and stuff on their website and things that you can order. So there's another place where you can get some education when we're getting into, as we're getting into October and that big week. That's my thing. So I saw that Jill asked a question in the chat and Joe and Angie both answered. Did that inspire any side questions? Do we need more information on any of that? Everybody feels pretty confident with all of this stuff? Well, should any of that change, we do have this Christmas lights, yes or no? I'm gonna take you off mute, Aaron. Oh, sorry, go on, Doug.
Let's say who's that question for,
Oh, that's from Aaron. Let's see if I can,
or who's it for?
there you go, Aaron. You should be able to come off mute.
So in the IFC, it talks about, like temporary lighting and it's only available for 90 days. And it's geared toward Christmas lights, because they're temporary around the holidays. But now teachers are stringing Christmas lights all over in their rooms. They're being hung from all the ceilings. They're being used as like lights instead of the overhead lights being on. So everyone kind of seems to say different things. It would just be great if everyone across the state did the same thing, saying yes, they're allowed, no, they're not allowed. Because technically they are a temporary lighting source.
That's a good question. I guess I don't have that answer either necessarily. I'd have to kind of discuss what our deputies, what they're seeing and what types of lighting they're seeing and kind of see what our consensus thoughts were before answering that. But I think good question. I'm not sure if anybody else on the call has a better answer than that.
Oh, sorry, Ian, I'll get you. Ian, sorry. I really do know your name. You should be able to come off mute now.
Thanks, Marcy. Say, Doug. So we've been kind of running into this a lot, just like she had asked. A couple of things that we've kind of come up with that are different are not only with the temporary lighting with all the strings, but also is all the lamps. And we'll have up to, I've seen 9 lamps and 9 strings of lights in some of the schools. So we did end up making a policy with the Bismarck Public Schools to where it's 3 lamps per room or 1 lamp per teacher in multi areas. But that being said, that's only with the public schools. So we still have our private schools and our Catholic schools, and we've not gotten that deal made with them. So like she had asked, that would be great if it was something, I don't know where it goes, if it's in the state code or state inspection or something, but there's the wiring, the lamps, and there are some other issues that kind of are a gray area.
I made you a note, Doug. So, we've got Mike, I'm allowing in. Go ahead, Mike, you should be able to come off mute.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm the Rolette Fire Chief here in Rolette, and we just did an inspection here. And I noticed that why is the different lighting and the lower lighting levels in classrooms happening?
The sensory issue.
Yeah,
I believe.
I'll say it's sensory, dulling the lights does dull the behavior. And it, those cool, warm lights do help with behavior classroom management. And the teachers, to give them credit, they don't know about the code and they just want to make a cozy environment for their kids. And I don't get complaints about that, but when I do go to classrooms, I do see it a lot too. So this is great information for us to know. So Doug, when you guys do have a decision, let us know and we'll put that out there too.
Also, I have one other comment about the Christmas lights. Are they being plugged in with extension cords or are they directly plugged into an outlet?
I've seen both. But even if they're directly plugged into an outlet, it's still considered a temporary lighting source. So it's only supposed to be used for a maximum of 90 days in a calendar year.
Okay. I want to go a little bit further with this. I mean, if that's okay, Doug, if you guys have time for this. I work in a nursing home where we're life safety. Christmas lights have to be plugged into a direct outlet. They cannot be used by extension cord because the extension cord is temporary use, but only at Christmas time. We should not be stringing them up and having them up all year round. It depends on where they have them. They could be tripping hazards or whatever. And there are a light gauge wire in there as well. So they can break, the coating can break on them easy too and start a fire or short out or whatever.
It's great point, and thanks for sharing that information. And yeah, I think Joe, I think we can take a couple of those questions on the Christmas lights and what different interpretations are being done across the state, and kind of look at what a unified one would be, similar to kind of how we did with the fire drills, and see if we can come up with a common answer across the board. Make sure we're all holding the same standard.
Can I ask one more question? I got one that's been kind of one of our main issues that we have is the decorating of walls with combustibles. So I stick with the 20%, 50%. I took over a few years ago here. So I've been working with the custodians now and had meetings with them. And now just last couple weeks ago, I actually met with every Bismarck Public School principal and did a presentation for them. But the questions I get asked is from the school system, they're told they're supposed to be doing these art shows and things like that. Like they're almost mandated to be doing art shows, bringing in the parents. And at that time, they're covering the walls with up to 100% of combustibles. I know, is there anything out there on allowing it for a temporary time, or how do we work through those situations where the school system's telling them one and we're telling them another?
Well, from my point of view, as an art teacher, so we've had this issue too. But I was in Colorado, but fire's fire. And I had to abide by code. So what we did was got unique, and we bought easels. So they're off the walls now. They're on easels. They're either on pieces of art or on tables with those small little easels. So all the kids, their work is displayed now in a safe manner, and it's off the wall. And I think if you bring that up to the schools and say, hey, I got an idea that would make everybody happy and legal, they'll buy into it, because then you can do we call it a gallery walk. Parents can walk through their entire school and go through each classroom and see all the kids' artwork that's displayed still, but again, it's off the wall.
Okay, we'd looked at that potentially for doing like the school system, getting a set of them and then doing gyms and then moving their art week around from gym to gym, but just kind of looking at some different ideas. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate you guys bringing some interesting questions into this. That's good to hear that there's some common and issues out there that we can work through. Aaron posted in the chat about the IFC code, I believe that is. Sorry for torturing that. Is that helpful, Doug? Is that what you guys need?
Yep, yeah, we can take a look at that and
Okay. All right.
address it at some point.
Okay. And I gave you guys all control of your mic. So if there's anything else you want to jump in with here, we've got about 20 minutes before we feel like we really have to get off. So anybody else have anything else they want to talk about? Nothing? Okay. Well, thank you, Joe and Angie. We really, really appreciate you jumping in and helping out with us. And
Anytime. I like to learn, so definitely like making these connections too. So if you have any questions, let us know.
we'll do. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks everybody for showing up.
Have a good day.
And it's recorded if you need it.